Well, this is one of the problems with this left-wing gender ideology, is that no one who espouses it can even tell you what these words mean. Like, what is a woman?
Well,
can you tell me what a woman is?
No, I can't. Because it's not for me to say.
So you're saying a trans man has the brain of a woman?
No. I'm saying that a trans man who identifies as a man.
Can a man become a woman?
No.
No?
No.
Matt Walsh, a conservative commentator and author, has become a well-known voice in American media for his unabashed critique of woke culture. Walsh's criticism of woke culture isn't limited to abstract ideas. He frequently addresses its personal and societal impacts on real people. He contends that people are being pressured to conform to ideas that lack scientific backing and logical consistency.
And then in the last few years, people like yourself have come along and said, we desperately need to do this or people will be in despair and they might kill themselves. So you are making a claim that contradicts common sense, science, biology, also the entire experience of the whole history of the human race.
One of Walsh's core arguments lies in his definition of a woman as an adult human female. He sees gender as a biological fact, rooted in objective realities, not a social construct open to individual interpretation. This stance has made him a central figure in debates over gender identity and the concept of womanhood, which he often summarizes with the simple statement, a woman is an adult human female.
Well, this is one of the problems with this left-wing gender ideology, is that no one who espouses it can even tell you what these words mean. Like, what is a woman?
Well,
can you tell me what a woman is?
No, I can't. Because it's not for me to say. Womanhood looks different for everybody.
What do you define a woman as?
An adult human female.
And what does a female mean?
Well,
how
that's
do you define a female?
someone with female reproductive organs.
Okay.
Someone who's, here's the thing, when you're female, it goes right down to your bones, your DNA.
In his public debates, Walsh uses direct questions to illustrate his point. For instance, he's known to ask hypothetical scenarios, such as, if a biological male says he's having a miscarriage, would you check him for it? By using such examples, Walsh aims to demonstrate what he sees as the logical inconsistencies of denying biological differences between men and women. For him, identifying as a woman doesn't change biological reality, and he argues that ignoring this reality leads to societal confusion and undermines the truth.
Womanhood is something that is an umbrella term. It includes people who...
That describes what?
People who identify as a woman.
Identify as what?
As a woman.
What is that?
Was to each their own. Each woman, each man, each person is going to have a different relation with their own gender identity and define it differently. And so trans women are women too.
Walsh believes that gender ideology promotes confusion rather than clarity, especially for younger generations. He sees the notion of fluid gender identities as a rejection of science and a threat to social stability. Instead, Walsh argues for a return to scientific truth in discussions about gender, contending that biological realities are essential for understanding identity. His critics, however, say that this rigid definition fails to account for the lived experiences of transgender and non-binary people.
You want to reduce.
You won't even tell me what the word means, though. So that's the problem.
You want to reduce women. You want to reduce men down to maybe just their genetics, our genitals, our chromosomes, right? That's what you're saying.
You want to do is
that's
what you want to do is appropriate women. You want to appropriate womanhood, and turn it into basically a costume that could be worn.
Walsh's debates with proponents of woke ideology often reflect a clash between what he sees as reason-based arguments and what he believes are ideologically driven beliefs. According to Walsh, his opponents in these debates frequently rely on emotional appeals rather than addressing the facts, something he describes as verbal gymnastics.
So a man who identifies with the gender, the social construct of womanhood, actually is a woman. So if you can laugh all you want, but this is a logical problem. You are conflating sex and gender just by saying that. So that's the problem.
Walsh argues that his opponents use tactics like straw man arguments, where they distort his position and then argue against that distortion. Another common tactic, according to Walsh, is the appeal to emotion, where individuals attempt to bypass rational debate by focusing on emotionally charged stories. Walsh counters this by sticking firmly to his arguments, presenting what he sees as a logical defense based on objective facts rather than subjective feelings. Another method Walsh frequently points out is the use of ad hominem attacks, where instead of addressing his arguments, critics attack his character, labeling him as intolerant or out of touch. He believes this tactic reflects a lack of intellectual rigor within woke ideology, arguing that if his critics cannot dismantle his ideas directly, they resort to character attacks as a means of silencing dissent. By maintaining his composure and adhering to his principles, Walsh aims to expose these tactics as diversions from meaningful discussion.
There's biological sex, and then there is gender identity. Part of me wants to ask why you care so much, because it's really not that big of a deal.
Oh, yeah. Can I answer that? I'd love to answer that question. I care about the truth. So basic truth matters. I want to live in a society where people care about the truth and we're grounded in truth. Right. I care about children, and these insane ideas about gender are being foisted on kids, and that bothers me quite a bit. I care about the women who are having their opportunities stolen from them. I care quite a bit, yeah.
In Walsh's view, one of the primary flaws of woke ideology is its reliance on ideological assertions that lack factual backing. He argues that much of what is presented within woke culture, concepts like gender fluidity, non-binary identities, and intersectionality, often lacks empirical evidence and is promoted more as beliefs than as scientifically grounded ideas. For example, Walsh frequently highlights what he sees as contradictions in the logic of gender fluidity, questioning how an individual can claim multiple genders while gender itself is defined biologically. Walsh asserts that woke culture encourages individuals to replace reasoned debate with what he calls dogmatic assertions. Rather than fostering a climate of intellectual exploration, he argues, woke culture stifles dissent by promoting specific beliefs as absolute truths. This, he contends, leads to an environment where questioning the status quo is discouraged, which, in his opinion, blocks innovation and progress. For Walsh, embracing objective realities, such as biological truths, is essential to an informed society that values both intellectual and scientific integrity.
Thinking back to when I was 16 in an anatomy class, when I learned that transgender people tend to have the brain structure that confirms their identity that they identify with. And you can look that up. That's a fact.
I will look that up.
Yeah, it's a fact.
I will look that up and I won't find it.
Yeah.
It's not a fact. It's not a fact.
Should we all pull out Google really quick?
One of the most divisive issues Walsh addresses is the debate over transgender athletes in women's sports. Walsh argues that allowing biological males to compete in women's sports is inherently unfair and undermines the integrity of women's athletic competitions. He contends that the physical advantages gained through male puberty, such as increased muscle mass and bone density, do not disappear with hormone therapy, thereby creating an uneven playing field.
Like this whole concept of men competing against women in women's sports is absurd. It's ridiculous. It's laughable. And if this kind of thing was happening 25 years ago, there would probably be a comedy like this made about it. But these days,
This stance places Walsh in opposition to many voices within the sports and entertainment industries, who advocate for the inclusion of transgender athletes based on gender identity rather than biological sex. For Walsh, however, the issue is about protecting fairness and safety in women's sports. He argues that prioritizing inclusivity over fairness could ultimately erase the hard-earned achievements of female athletes and disrupt the essence of competitive sports. His critics, meanwhile, view his position as exclusionary and harmful to transgender individuals, arguing that all athletes should have the opportunity to compete according to their gender identity.
there's key, though. You said that they have to. You were talking to someone who supports men and women's sports. They have to. They have to go along with it. They have to agree to whatever absurd scenario you throw at them. And they really do. They have to. But I don't think they actually believe it. I think that the number of people who really deep down believe that it's fair and right for biological males to compete against females in sports, I mean, the number of people is vanishingly small.
A particularly sensitive topic that Walsh addresses is the question of medical interventions, such as puberty blockers and hormone therapy, for transgender minors. Walsh argues that these treatments are experimental and potentially harmful, especially for young people who may not fully comprehend the long-term consequences of their decisions. He raises concerns about the lack of long-term studies on the effects of these treatments, questioning whether they should be administered to minors who are still developing and may change their minds as they grow older. Walsh's stance has put him at odds with medical professionals and LGBTQ+ advocates who argue that gender-affirming care can be life-saving for transgender youth. Proponents of these interventions often cite studies that show improved mental health outcomes for transgender youth who receive such care. However, Walsh remains skeptical, calling for more research and a cautious approach to irreversible medical procedures. For him, supporting children with gender dysphoria should involve exploring non-medical alternatives that avoid potential risks associated with physical interventions.
The claim that this prevents suicide or has positive psychological effects down the line is utterly, totally baseless. There are no credible long-term studies that bear that out. And one of the reasons for that is that there couldn't possibly be any credible long-term studies because we've never done this to kids on this scale ever before in history. So this current, shall we say, crop of children, they are the guinea pigs. This is all experimental. We're sort of trying it out on them to see if it works.
As one of the loudest critics of woke culture, Walsh has drawn the ire of many within Hollywood and the broader entertainment industry. Hollywood, long aligned with progressive ideologies, often embraces and promotes concepts that Walsh strongly opposes, such as fluid gender identities and social justice narratives. Many celebrities and influencers have publicly condemned Walsh's views, labeling him as intolerant and out of touch with modern society.
But you know, the thing is, our position on this topic is so basic and so simple and so obviously right that there's really no reason to be nervous. You could walk into a debate with anybody because your point of view is so simple. I mean, if it was a more complex topic that required me to actually be smart to address it, then I think that would have given me some pause before, you know, walking into an environment like that.
Did they cut out much of what you had to say? Did you kind of watch it when it released and thought, goodness, they cut out that excellent point I made?
What do you think? Has Hollywood's focus on progressive values turned into a monopoly over cultural narratives? Or is it simply reflecting the changing attitudes of society? Let's keep the conversation going. Drop your thoughts in the comments below.